So welcome everyone to our middle of the day reading. For those who are used to Inlandia events, this is sort of unusual, but there's something kind of important going on later that we didn't want to compete with. I can't remember what it is, but I'm glad you're all here. Thank you for joining us to celebrate the funding of our Vital Anthology Kickstarter campaign. It still is open until 9 o'clock this evening, so it's not quite over yet. So please, if you are so inspired, please do go to the website and do back the project. So before we get started, I just wanted to say a few words about Inlandia for those who don't know who we are. We are a literary nonprofit, and we serve all of inland Southern California and beyond. And today we have several guests with us who are preview readers from the anthology. We have Sally Wiener Grota, Eric Schwitzgable, Mu Ming, and Simone Heller, along with the anthology editor, Ralph Ambrose. So we'll hear from all of them in just a minute. But before I go any further, Inlandia Institute respectfully acknowledges and recognizes our responsibility to the original and current caretakers of this land, water, and air, the Cahuilla, Tongva, Luiseno, and Serrano peoples, and all of their descendants, past, present, and future. Today, the Inlandia region is home to many Indigenous peoples from all over the world, and we express our gratitude to them for allowing us the opportunity to live and work on their homelands. So I would like to introduce Ralph Ambrose. So Ralph, welcome.
Thanks, Katie. I want to thank all of you for joining us today for our celebration of the Kickstarter success. At about 6:30 yesterday evening, we got the news that Vital, the Future of Healthcare, had reached 100% funding. This means that we'll have enough money for about a half-length anthology that will include all of the authors who have been named on the Kickstarter page itself. So yay, thank you, thank you, thank you. Many of you have already pledged, and this is only possible. Our event and the book are only possible because of generous backers who believe in the project. I give my heartfelt thanks to all of our backers. I also want to thank Katie Porter, Executive Director of Inlandia Institute, for your support, Katie, and for the sponsorship of Inlandia for this project. And also my abiding gratitude goes out to the other volunteers who have helped put together this project. Thank you so much. So there are lots of crucial issues facing the world today, and so many of them are coming to a head right now. Healthcare has been a topic, a really big topic in the US for a long time, but the pandemic has put medicine in the spotlight around the world. But it always has been a universal issue because of health, because health itself is a universal need. And intersects with so many other crucial issues. The global pandemic is a stark reminder, but it's not the only one. For example, climate change could lead to a host of health issues, from nutrition to heat-related deaths to diseases thriving in regions where they used to flounder. Not to mention intensified natural disasters like hurricanes. And we just, I guess, ran out of the alphabet and we've got Hurricane Epsilon, I just heard, which is likely to brush Bermuda very soon. And they're increasing in intensity, like the fires that we've seen in Australia. And of course, here in California, like a half mile away from my house, we had a fire threatening our community this last week. So there's, these are just some of the issues. Broad issues like racism and gun violence are also now recognized as public health issues. So healthcare is a lens through which writers can explore these themes in compelling and cutting edge ways. We've got some great writers here for you today. As Katie just introduced, Eric, Sally, and Kongyun or Muming have all are included in the core of the anthology, listed on our Kickstarter page. And we also have, as a bonus, my friend Simone joining us from Germany. I had the great privilege of editing her story, Caloid Dreams, for the special medical science fiction issue of Future Science Fiction Digest. And she's a Taos Toolbox classmate of mine, so very to have her here as well. And I hope that you enjoy all of their readings. We should be doing this over a course of about 9 minutes. So thank you very much, all of you. Back to you, Katie.
Okay. So let's just hear from each of our presenters real quick. If you want to say hi and your name, maybe where you're calling from, and some quick fun fact or weird fact, anything you want to share about yourselves. And we're going to go in order of the readers today. So our first reader is going to be Eric. So if you want to say a quick hi.
Hi, I'm Eric Schwitzgable from Riverside, and my fun fact is that I have not yet tried to translate what the Chinese says here, so I'm going to ask Ming if she can when this reading is over.
Awesome. I can't help with that. Sorry. And our next reader is going to be Sally. Sally?
Hi, I'm Sally Wienergrada. And fun fact, before all this happened and I could travel, I was a crazy world traveler journalist. So a lot of my craziness, like swimming in the Antarctic, it has inspired my fiction.
Very cool. Well, thank you for joining us. And next we have Mu Ming.
Hi everyone, I'm Mu Ming. My real name is Hong Yun, but I use my pen name a lot for my writing, so you can call me Mu Ming. I'm calling from New York. Fun fact, currently I'm in the room of my cat. So we have a spare room just for the cats because the two of them, I have two of them, and they fight each other very hard. So I kept a litter box and a scratch box and a dish plate there for one of them, the most aggressive one. And I locked the door, and hopefully my room was not ruined after we finished the session, because now they have to live together for like 1 hour.
Oh, all right. Well, we wish you the best, and we hope the cats survive. Thank you for risking that. And our last reader today is going to be Simone Heller. Hi, Simone.
Hi, I'm Simone Heller, and I'm calling from Regensburg, Bavaria. And fun fact is I'm living on an island. It's in the river Danube, and it's in a house from the 17th century.
Oh, wow. So some history there. That's awesome. Very cool. I like old houses. So thank you, Simone, and thank you all. I think we're going to go ahead and introduce our first reader today. So Eric Schwitzgable is a professor of philosophy at the University of California, Riverside. He publishes widely on moral psychology, consciousness, and science fiction. So welcome, Eric.
Hey, so thanks to everyone for coming. Also, I guess I'll mention I have a blog called The Splintered Mind, where I do philosophy, psychology, and science fiction. This New Year's Eve, as we wave the year 2055 goodbye, let's pause a moment to celebrate psychotechnology. Our decorations and champagne are not the only things that sparkle. We ourselves glow and fizz as humankind never has before. What amazing energy drinks we have. What powerful and satisfying neural therapies. If human well-being is a matter of reaching our creative and intellectual potential, we flourish now beyond the dreams of previous generations. Sixth graders master calculus and insightfully critique the collected works of Plato, as only college students could do before. Scientific researchers work 16-hour days, sleeping 3 times as efficiently as their parents did, refreshed and eager to start at 2:30 a.m. Our visual arts, our poetry, our athletics and dance and craft works all arguably surpass the most brilliant artists and performers of a century ago. If human well-being is not a matter of creative intellectual flourishing, but instead consists in finding joy, tranquility, and life satisfaction, we attain these things too, as never before. Gone are the blues. Our custom pills, drinks, and magnetic therapies banish all dull moods. Gone too is excessive anxiety. Gone are anger, cruelty, immorality, and bitter conflict. There can be no Holocaust, no Vietnam War, no gang violence, no rape, no crops rotting in warehouses while the masses starve. With the help of psychotechnology, we are too mature and rational to allow such things. Gone even are grumpiness and dissatisfaction, except as temporary spices to balance the sweetness of life. If you don't like who you are, or who your spouses or your children are, or if work seems a burden, or if your 2,000 square foot apartment seems too small, you needn't remain dissatisfied unless you want to. And why on earth would anyone want to? According to every major philosophical and psychological theory of well-being, we are by far the best off generation in history, the happiest, healthiest, most productive, and longest lived people ever. The unhappy purist minority who reject modern psychotechnology correctly emphasize that anger, bitterness, dissatisfaction, and hate have historically driven rebellion and social change. They call us sheep because we are delighted to give our government, our employers, and our clients whatever they reasonably ask of us. Now, in a certain sense of freedom, we are admittedly less free than our grandparents were. Corporations and the government suggest what lives to lead, and we accept their wisdom rather than fight. To enjoy peace, we gladly defer to those in power. Freedom is not worth the cost of war, genocide, starvation, and the whole history of human cruelty, suffering, and hate. It's almost monstrous to suggest otherwise. Would you fail to stop a murder because you value the murderer's freedom to kill? Would you allow a Holocaust? Now, in another sense of freedom, we're perfectly free. We choose devotion to our social roles, and we feel wholeheartedly satisfied with that choice. Maybe after some psychological tweaking to make it so. We do exactly what we want, which, by no accident, harmoniously aligns with what society wants from us. Those who reject psychotechnology romanticize the ill-tempered rebel, the free thinker, the misfit, those who are wild and unhappy and impractical, the cowboy movie hero, the drunken poet, the infinitely grieving lover. True, humanity loses a certain kind of tragic beauty in consigning all such characters to history. But our lives are not artwork to be valued for their tragic elements. Happy endings are better. The purists who refuse psychotechnology will fade into obscurity. They will lose all contests with the rest of us, ever more reliably as our technology improves. If you refuse to employ neurotherapy, cognitive enhancers, and mood regulators at work, or if you deploy them for maverick ends, you will underperform. If you're a salesperson who refuses appropriate psychotechnology, you will be frustratingly slow, make sloppy mistakes. You won't reliably display a cheerful face to the customer. If you're a nurse, you'll likewise be slow, sloppy, and unpleasant, and will matter even more. Why would an employer want you? Go freelance? You'll also fail. No technology rejecting lawyer, electrician, or entertainer can expect in the long run to compete effectively for clients. If you refuse to give your children psychotechnology, cognitive enhancers, neurotherapy, mood regulators, they will be fussy, selfish, inattentive, dense, impatient, rebellious, forgetful, and moody. They'll perform badly in their classes. Their peers will choose happier, kinder, more creative, and more energetic children as friends. If your deprived child seeks a sip of another child's mood regulator, they'll feel their fussiness dissolve into calm bliss, and they'll wonder why their parents refused them this benefit. Your children will beg you for the psychotechnology they need to be happy, successful, and well-liked. We can embrace psychotechnology and enjoy its immense benefits at the cost of losing angry freedom and tragic beauty, or we can reject psychotechnology and be stupid, unhappy, and unemployed. The choice is clear. I raise my energy drink to the memory of 2055 and will party without exhaustion all night. In 2056, let everyone sparkle.
Well, thank you so much for that story, that scary story, exciting story. One of the things that we talked about doing was our authors are going to ask a question of each other on the panel. And I think, Eric, you had a question to ask?
Yeah, my thought was to ask everyone if they had an opportunity to change something about their biology, something that might reasonably be changeable in the next 50 years through technology, what would they choose to change? Upgrade yourself somehow.
Does anybody want to, who wants to go first? Unmute yourself if you want to answer.
Well, I've had the answer in my mind since I was a child. I love being in the ocean. I want to be one of the first to get gills so I can do it without scuba equipment. That would be fun.
All right. Anybody else have any? That would be a great technology breakthrough if we could do that.
So yeah, I've been thinking, I've been used to technical aids for my eyes all my life. And I would like to have it a little bit better, like giving me extra information, or maybe I could zoom in or get more wavelength or something. So better eyesight, please.
I think we could all use that. I would go for technology like that. Or even something attached to my hand so I don't drop my phone. Phone screens built into your palms.
It's like a segue to a Mooming story, actually.
Okay.
But yeah.
So do you want to introduce our next reader, Ralph?
Great, yes. So our next reader up next on our list is Sally Wiener-Grotta. She is an award-winning author, journalist, and photographer whose stories, whether fiction or nonfiction, visual or verbal, usually start with why or why not. Sally.
Thank you, Ralph. I'm reading from my story, One Widow's Healing. Okay. Dr. Maria Hilari fidgeted with her avatar's gown. editing it up to the last minute, despite the rental agreement that forbade tampering with the design. Regardless what Chanel's virtual saleswoman, Gabrielle, had said, the sequins weren't right, too fussy, too many, especially for a simple nanophysician who lived almost entirely in shorts and t-shirts and rarely wore shoes. At least the avatar's hair emulated her chin-length gray frizz, and the rounded body approximated Maria's, though with more bust, longer legs, and, well, unbent back. But it was all too frivolous, just when she needed the world to take her seriously. Why did I let Gabrielle talk me out of renting white tie and tails? Maria glanced at the countdown clock. The ceremony was about to begin. Dolled up and glittery or sensible and solemn. I'm in the thick of it now. Zooming out through her desk's holographic projection, Maria tested her avatar controls one last time. Having declined a bodysuit, she wore a mesh headset, gloves, and slippers. She turned her head right and left, wiggled her hands, shuffled her feet, and the avatar mimicked her movements. Initially, Maria had planned to attend in person. What an adventure that would have been. Heck, she'd rarely been outside of Scranton, let alone as far as Europe. Until recently, Scranton had been enough. Gazing out her window at the winter bare trees and granite hills of Naog Park, Maria imagined she could still smell evergreens and river spray, mixed with the taste of Doug's flesh on hers. Her mind overlaid years of memories. Hand-in-hand strolls along the park's nearly deserted paths, through winter snows, spring blossoms, summer breezes, fallen leaves. On one such autumn walk 20 years ago, a scruffy mutt, Watson, had bounded into their path and their hearts. Maria hadn't left their one-bedroom apartment in nearly 13 years, never feeling the wind or touching another creature since Watson died 2 months after Doug. Not that she was hearth-locked, just that, like most people, she had no reason to go outside. All information, entertainment, or interactions were online. Anything she needed or wanted could be 3D'd or droned. Physician, heal yourself, she thought. Time to re-enter the real world. But within minutes of Maria RSVPing yes to the all-expense-paid trip to Sweden, Mark Singh, Whole Life Systems Chief Communications Officer, had VidCon. Congratulations on the Nobel, Dr. Hilary. His voice had oozed sincerity, though his avatar's smile had failed to crinkle its eyes. I'll be your liaison for the ceremony and its aftermath. He proceeded to explain the intricate rules of etiquette, who to bow to, how deeply, proper titles, when to speak, how to speak. Too many directives, too tedious to remember. I'll do my best to protect you from the crackpots that'll come out of the woodwork, but I can do nothing about the pressing crowds you'll encounter in Stockholm. I think I'll stay home, Maria had decided. Singh had readily agreed. I'll arrange for the avatar rental. Maria glanced at the pictures on either side of her wall monitor. Well, Doug, she said to her favorite, the VidCon of Watson and Doug cuddling on the sofa. I might be there only virtually, but hell, they'll have to listen to me now. A drum roll from her speakers prompted everyone in the Stockholm concert hall to stand for the Swedish royal anthem. Then Maria's avatar joined the other honorees on their promenade down the aisle toward their red velvet seats on the royal blue stage. Viewing the crowded auditorium through her avatar's eyes on her holodesk and via the public stream on her wall monitor, Maria had difficulty distinguishing who was physically present and who was a hologram avatar. Singh had said that Doctors Lamont Mitchell and Kamu Kwaman would attend in person. But walking behind Maria's avatar, they resembled their official corporate pictures too closely. perfectly trimmed beards, one pure white, the other gray, neat ear-length hair, exactly the color of their beards, and just the right touch of casual smugness. If they're avatars, she wondered, what does it say about them that they choose to look artificial? Maria knew she was no genius, not like Mitchell and Quammen, whose various cyber-medical innovations had changed the way medicine was practiced. She was in Stockholm, virtually, thanks to a mere intuitive leap prompted by a widow's loneliness, backed up retrospectively with a decade of data crunching. Yet Mitchell and Quammen had to share their prize with her, since their newest invention was based on her discovery. Her discovery, damn it. And here on the world stage, WLS will no longer be able to silence her. Her avatar sat motionless on the stage among the 20 other honorees, while Maria was stuck at her desk in her small living room office, doing nothing. Officials droned on, prizes were awarded, and musical interludes played. At this rate, it would be another 40 minutes before her turn. Maria was jolted out of her reveries by a medical alert icon buzzing on her wall screen. Whatever the emergency, she knew it would be covered by the substitute nanophysician Singh had assigned to handle today's 39 scheduled patients. But she was worried about Alex Asante and Maddie Khan and Asia Krupp, and one by one, names and faces catapulted through her mind. Maria couldn't help herself, even now in the midst of the most momentous event of her life, because they were her life. Maria had been chastised more times than she could count. You're online to check diagnostics and prescribe, not to engage in social diversions or invade individuals' privacies. Still, she had overstepped the bounds only when she felt it was necessary, never going far enough for WLS to carry out their threats of dismissal. WLS had changed tactics sometime between her paper's publication and Mitchell and Quammen's unveiling of their robotic healing hands. Nowadays, her supervisors seldom threatened dismissal. Mostly WLS ignored her, including any of her attempts to explain how and why the cyber hands were a travesty. Maria wondered if Mitchell or Quammen had even read her paper, or had an assistant skimmed the abstract and concocted a one-line report focusing on a few key words: hands, touch, palpate, heal. What had she expected? Who read anything longer than a wrist pad screen these days? The medical alert kept buzzing. Why was the sub ignoring it? Oh, heck, what harm would it do to open a thumbnail window while the ceremony continues to stream on the main screen and the holodesk? But as soon as she read the scrolling inset message, Joseph Alberson, small vessel cerebral aneurysms, Maria went into full VidCon mode. Hello, Joe. How are you feeling? Not so good, Doc. My head hurts awful bad. I know, Joe. While I fix it, keep me company. Tell me, who won the Mega Regatta today? They chatted while Maria directed Joe's nanites to repair the vessel walls, remove plaque and inflammation, and administer an analgesic. When she tried to add nanotros to Joe's daily meds to prevent future aneurysms, an unauthorized warning box strobed on her screen, as she had expected. Nanotros was a high-cost anti-modulator considered unsuitable for the 28% of patients who couldn't afford supplemental plans, the so-called lifers, like Joe. Oh, that's better. Thanks, Doc. I'm glad, Joe. I'm prescribing auto-repeat analgesic treatments as needed. Bye. Maria wished she didn't have to hang up on him so quickly, but she needed to get back to the ceremony. Dr. Maya Eklund, director of the Royal Swedish Academy of Science, stepped to the podium. One of the great mysteries of modern medicine, she said, has been why otherwise healthy people have been dying at an increasing rate. The whole life system provides a consistent standard of life for everyone, combating the potential for illness and incapacity the moment our internal nanites detect a micro anomaly, often arresting disease or disability before any symptoms manifest. Yet mortality rates continue to rise. A subsistence standard for lifers, Maria sniped silently. You think you're doing them a favor, giving them base level nutrition, housing, and healthcare? Joe deserves better. Eklund droned on about Maria's meticulous analyses of over 20 million patient records. Then she launched into a gushing description of Mitchell's and Quammen's implementation of Maria's discovery with their robotic healing hands. Through the dynamic data exchange between these palpating cyber hands and patients' nanites, Eklund said, we now have the diagnostic missing link that we can expect will reverse mortality rates. Damn their cherry-picking twisting of my paper, but no more. Tonight, I'll finally tell the world. WLS's accursed cyber hands aren't the answer. Eklund finished with a flourish. Dr. Maria Heller, please step forward to receive the 2100 Nobel Prize for Medicine from Her Majesty. At the press conference following the ceremony, Maria's avatar sat with Marshall and Quammen on the stage of an historic wood-paneled lecture hall, jam-packed with journalists. Unlike the stage ceremony, the energy in the room was frenetic and nerve-wracking. A Nobel Foundation spokesperson, whose name Maria couldn't remember, introduced them. Drs. Heller, Marshall, and Quammen will each speak briefly, then they'll field your questions. She turned toward Maria's avatar. Dr. Heller. Maria took a deep breath to steady her hands on the avatar's controls. It was now or never. Suddenly, the holofeed from the avatar's eyes went black, and the words that came out of her avatar's mouth weren't Maria's uploaded statement. Thank you, Miss Nyman, the avatar nodded to the woman who introduced it. I'm honored to share a Nobel Prize with Dr. Marshall and Dr. Quammen, whose humanitarian work I have long admired. Her avatar had been hijacked. I'll leave it there so you can read the rest in the Vital Anthology.
Excellent. Cliffhanger. Do you have a question you'd like to pose to our panelists?
Sure, but it's one they may want to think about a bit. When I wrote One Widow's Healing, this story, back in the olden days of 2019, I had no idea that so much of the story would resonate with our lives so soon. So I've been thinking, if we were to go in the future, looking back on the year 2020, how will our descendants have been changed in their perspectives on illness and health by whatever vectors are now forming during this current pandemic and crazy year?
Good question. Anybody want to take a stab at answering now, or you want to mull it over?
I'll venture one thought, maybe help buy some time for folks. One of the thoughts may be also how things go with a vaccine. Vaccines. There's already anti-vaccine sentiments, and so there may be a lot at stake here with the success of this vaccine. I hope it goes very well. I think it's amazing the scientific work that's going on to accelerate that process, put money into it. But there may be a lot riding on it, and so I'm definitely hoping this goes very well.
Isn't it true that there's, that any vaccines that are on the table right now would still, even the best vaccines only have a 50% efficacy rate? I'm not sure about that. I remember reading that somewhere. But I think, in time, we're all going to look back on the pre-pandemic period when we could be in the same room with people and when we didn't have to wear a mask to the grocery store as some mythic pre-period. So anybody else?
I think one thing that's likely to change is that it's going to be a lot easier to telecommute, right? That we're putting in the infrastructure and the social policies that let people work from home who choose to do so and when it works for their jobs. So it's kind of pushed us forward towards something that was maybe coming anyway. It accelerated that, I think. That's going to be one, regardless of how well or badly the vaccine or fall goes. I think that's going to be one lasting impact.
Yeah. Well, I can't say I mind, because in this case, it's allowed people to Zoom in from New York and Germany and the Poconos. So, I kind of like this, and I didn't ever have to go anywhere today. I mean, I did, but I didn't have to. So I think at this time, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our third reader. And she's Zooming in from New York. Mu Ming is a speculative fiction writer, translator, and a programmer. She's currently living in New York, and she started publishing short stories in Chinese in 2016, which seems like it was just yesterday. And already she has won multiple awards. So welcome, Mu Ming, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Al, and hello, everyone. I'm Mu Ming. As I have already said, this is my pen name, but feel free to call me in this name or my Chinese name, which is Hongyun, which I think pronunciation might be harder for you guys. Today, I will be reading a story called Colors Award. So the story was written, I think, in 2018, long time ago. But I think it's also, as Sally said, it's kind of like reflected some of the current situations in this special year. So I will try to read the introduction part and also the ending part. The ending is the story was ended with a diary, but I will just pick a few pieces from the diary. And also, that I wrote this in Chinese, and this story was translated into English. So reading it is also not that native to me. So apologies for anything that you may not hear very clear, because I'm not English native speaker, I'm Chinese native speaker. Hopefully you can read all the story in the anthology coming out more clearly. So now I'm starting with the beginning. Beginning is a quote. And now I might come to shore, I saw zest, with ship and crew, sailing over the wine dark sea, unto men of strange speech, even to Temesa. I was 11 when I first read the Odyssey. Athena brought to Telemachus the news that his father Odysseus had returned from Troy. Samuel Butcher's elegant translation was full of troublesome Greek names and foreign inflections. But one word jumped out at me. What is wine dark? I asked Mom. She winked at me. What do you think? I think Homer was using it as a metaphor. Lessons at school came to my mind. The sea is blue, isn't it? Homer was blind. Mom let out a sigh. And the sea isn't always so blue. The word blue didn't exist in ancient Greek. Remember the beach in Long Island? How did the ocean look at the sunset? I tried to recall those summer days when I rode by the beach. The sky would be turquoise green, like the water, but it turned violet and agate colored where it met the sea. On the horizon, milky white clouds shaped themselves into an Olympian palace where crimson gold rays, like heavenly rivers, poured into a darkened sea. I liked summer vacations. During those months, I was surrounded by seagulls' cries and the sea breeze murmurs instead of my classmates' knowing whispers. To be honest, I didn't find Asian poetry and oil paints all that bad. When I was even younger, I used to sit in a stroller and watch as Mom painted. She would often lose track of time until I began to bow. But by the age of 11, I had understood that life wasn't about verses and pigments. I had learned this the hard way. So this is the introduction part, and now I'm reading from the diary, the ending part of the story. January 25th, 2024. The diary is from the mom. I met Joe at the ski resort today, and just like that, his eyes had me mesmerized. They are colored in a light icy blue laced by 1,000 different shades of green and lilac and lazurite. How is it even possible for someone to have eyes like that? He probably laughed at me though, because I looked so dumbstruck. The thing is, I quickly realized that he is probably colorblind. His ski suit is green, the ugliest green I have ever seen. It looks like an avocado 6 months past its best before date. And it's got this dirty look orange streaks. I was giggling in front of him the whole time. I couldn't help myself. And that confused him to no end. I think I will need to take charge of his closet. But the upside is that I don't need to worry about other girls hitting on him on the trails. May 30, 2028. Yes, the last bunch of flowers got here in time for the wedding. White peonies picked fresh from the Fairbanks farms this morning. Budding white gardenias for my bouquet. White candles, white lace tablecloth. White, white, white for each and everything. Joe was apprehensive and asked me if I was sure about my color choice for the wedding. How can I make him understand? He cannot see that white is not white, like how the snow looked when we first met. I told him to picture the color of opal, a color that is, in plainest word, a refulgent fire of the carbunch, the glorious purple of amethyst, the sea green of emerald, and all those colors glittering together. It can hold its own against even the deepest, richest colors in a painter's arsenal. That is what white looks like to me. And once again, all that went completely over his head. He kept nodding, though, as if he really did see it. I had to kiss him then and there. White is how he looks when he tries to pretend that he gets it. And when he earnestly searches for a word to describe what I see. White is how my love looks. November 1st, 2030. Amy has arrived in this world. When I first laid eyes on her, all wrapped up and tiny, I couldn't believe that she came from me. She looks nothing like me. I'm olive-skinned, but she is very pale. Her tiny blood vessels look like cream-covered blueberries. She's the wrong color, I kept telling the nurses. It took him quite a while to understand what I was talking about, and even longer to calm me down with their reassurance. I know, it's absurd. She doesn't have to share my skin color, but it just keeps bugging me and refuses to go away. Colors are special to me. I have been long understood that most people cannot see as many colors as I do. By the age of 7, I was already the most singular student in my art class. I wasn't that good at drawing, but anyone who's ever seen my paintings said they would instantly tell they were mine. Nobody else could use those colors like I did. And I hadn't even managed to convey 1% of what I saw to the canvas. I hope that Amy will take after me. If she turns out to be normal, she will be confined to such a dull and boring world. July 6, 2035. I have had it with Joe. He dropped a slice of apple on the floor, but he couldn't tell where the apple ended and where the wood flooring began. To me, the piece stood out like a chunk of lime-colored salami, but he just could not see it. Unbelievable. We almost had a fight over it. I don't know what's wrong with me. I've heard that they are doing trials for some kind of retina adjustment technology. Maybe that will make draw normal. I have started putting Amy next to me as I paint, hoping that she can soak some of it in. She might be a little too young for this, but Cézanne and Monet has such vibrant colors, and I hope she will embrace their magic. So far, it hasn't worked. September 2nd, 2037. I'm at a loss for words. Amy is complaining that she cannot tell her teacher's writing on the board. Blue chunk looks the same as dark green. I am seized by a terrible sense of feeling. I asked her to spot the subtle color difference in the Impressionist paintings. She couldn't. Amy cannot tell the color blue from green. It's not as bad as Joe's red-green color blindness, but it feels far short of normal vision, let alone mine. Amy, when she came into the world, I had such high hopes for her, hopes that now seeping with irony. Should we let Amy get the adjusters? Joe and I had a heated discussion. I couldn't imagine my daughter living in a world with missing colors, but Joe said it wasn't that big deal. He didn't feel like he was missing out on life. That is because you don't know what you're missing, I tried to tell him. Think about it, a completely different world with more details, more clarity, more vividness, full of endless possibilities. Once you see it, how can you confine yourself to anything else? No, sweetheart. I have also seen things that you have never seen. He was smiling as he said this. The physics and mechanics can open up a whole new world for you. Once you understand the language of those equations and symbols, you will understand how the universe exists in a state of terrible harmony and equal fragility. Human emotions, indeed, human lives hold no meaning, but none of that can actually stop me from listening to you as you describe the wondrous side of this world, or feeling Amy's warmth as I cradle her in my arms. Language is like a pair of glasses, he said. It lets us to see things that otherwise escape us, but we need to decide when to put it on and when to take it off. We decided to wait and let Amy choose for herself in a few years. It needs to be her own decision. Before then, we will do our best to not keeping her condition from her. My peculiarity might have won me praises, but Amy won't be so lucky. I made a call to Amy's teacher. And the last part. April 25th, 2050. Amy will graduate soon. She is a healthy, intelligent, and confident young woman, just about perfect in every way. She also knows how to take care of herself. With the adjusters in place, her color perception has been normalized. I no longer have to worry about how she might end up like Joe. I am old now. My time has passed, like all ages must. Now I can only try to recapture the bygone days from those increasingly foreign worlds. They are like mind caves that sleep in the darkness. It's the same with people. A terrible thought has been haunting me of late. Why do different people like different colors? To Amy and Joe, the same lights translate into similar colors bordering on dull. But in my eyes, they are so stunning that I can hardly breathe. Do people with normal vision really see them in the exact same way? Nobody really knows. Each of us is like an isolated mining cave within the dark, and we will never know how the physical world is reflected in the cave next to us. The truth of the physical world is like a formless gray fog, and it's our individual mind that gives it its actual shape. Our perception removes the world for us, even though it is the only world we can ever know. What connects the cold, isolated caves isn't what we say, but what we say to each other. We can now define our individual experience, but we can give them a standard name. It's with the help of these names that we fall in love with each other in such a mad, chaotic world. What a miracle is it that, even though Homer's age of wine dark sea has long passed, even though Joe's white is nothing like my own, we can still share a trace of common feeling. You are drifting further and further away from me, Amy. There's nothing for me to do but to accept it and make my peace with it. All of us are too occupied with what we see so much so that we forget about how to listen and how to speak. Your dad understood all of this, but he is gone. The diary ends here, and my eyes, though tightly shut, are brimming with tears. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. And the question for me, I think, actually is similar as what we have discussed in the previously. Is that as we most of us have been work from home for a long time, like a few months. What do you think that may be the new technology or anything in science fiction that can make people feel more connected? Anything in science fiction or real world can work? Yeah, that's my question.
That's a good question. Anybody want to tackle that?
I have. This is more far future tech, but it's something I've been thinking about as a philosopher of consciousness, which is, at some point, will we be able to create something like high bandwidth direct interfaces between people's minds, so we can connect directly with somebody's mind, right? Without having to use the slow process of speech. And what would that be like? And would it what would it mean for the boundaries of being an individual? So that's pretty far out in terms of connection with people. But I think it's even thinking about it creates the opportunity for thinking kind of radically about what it is to be a human, or what the potentials are in this future.
If I could invent any technology and have it right now, it would be the ability to feel hugs, even though we're not in the same room. To feel the touch of someone you love that you can't be near would be the best thing technology could do for me right now. And I want it yesterday.
That would be awesome if we could do that. I know we're all missing that kind of connection. I think also maybe closer to now in terms of what might be possible, some kind of VR headset, so you feel like you're actually in the meeting with somebody, where it's more 3D instead of looking at a screen. You could see that. I'm not sure if I'm ready to be part of the Borg, but okay. Well, I think it's time for us to move to our fourth and final reader, and then we can open it up to audience questions. If anybody does have a question, please leave it for us in the Q&A box or raise your hand and we can allow you to speak it. So our fourth reader, Simone Heller, is a Hugo-nominated science fiction writer and translator from Regensburg, Germany, with a background in linguistics and cultural studies. So welcome, Simone.
Hi again, and thank you for sticking around so long. I'm going to read an excerpt from my story, Caloid Dreams. They told us we would be heroes. Sounds like a lie, doesn't it? Sounds like hitting a dented, cracked shell to see if deep inside a pinpoint of light might flicker on. We work just as well in the dark, but the Plowshares Decommission Initiative kept searching for high-profile jobs to win over the public. And when I signed up for the pilot program for nurses, I had hoped to do my part. Or at least step up from the landfills and factories where we had toiled away for years, moving like racket titans alongside industry bots, much better suited for the job. I was one of the first to get the upgrades. When I delivered myself to my patient, I was determined to care like only a bot can, 24/7, with a vast catalog of medical knowledge and a direct hookup to my patient's subcutaneous sensors. It was my first assignment with a human since the war, and I thought I was prepared. My patient didn't let me in. The door to his apartment wouldn't even block his neighbor's coughs and blaring music, much less someone like me. But we were supposed to ring the bell these days. I lifted my hand to wave. Body language is the key to human acceptance, and my sensor input showed him right on the other side, staring at the door camera. I'm your MedCloud CareBot, Mr. Callis, I said, as if the off-the-shelf nurse projection on my mimic display didn't show that. You should have been notified about your new treatment plan. His curses didn't quite make it through the door until he shouted, I told them I don't need anyone. He had a list of conditions longer than my compilation of friendly gestures. I don't think it's optional, Mr. Callis. There was a pause. Then the door was yanked open and he came at me, his adrenaline surge a constant flicker in my data stream. Who's your handler? He demanded. And I should have stopped short then. I hadn't had a handler for years. Who do I have to call to get you off my lawn? In this section of the hall, 3 lights in a row were broken. I turned up my display's brightness for him to see more than a hulking mass of metal in the shadows. Why don't we set up? Listen, scrap heap. His slippers smacked the vinyl floor as he stepped closer, his shaky fingers stabbing the air in front of my chest plate. Take that metal fist and shove your setup down the throat of whoever sent you. Do they have shit for brains now? I decided to involve MedCloud. I had been required to share my override code for emergencies, and they promptly used it to answer my query. I found myself piggybacking in my own chassis. Mr. Callis? Their clerk said through me, my default voice changing to hers. This is Demeter Rose of the MedCloud Insurance Group. Is there a problem? He blinked once at the mimic display showing Rose's features now. You parked your abomination on my doorstep. Remove it. BotCare is a premium all-in-one solution. Send one of those shiny small care units then. This, his gesture indicated my whole 2-meter bulk, is a Guiche-class tactical demolisher, no matter how many paint jobs you get it. I might have bolted then, but it wasn't me at the helm. The only thing I could do was the public background check MedCloud should have been done long before. Medical backlogs could only tell so much, and I flagged the data for Rose as it registered. Mr. Callis was a veteran of the rupture, one of the butchers. I filed a request to be reassigned to another patient. But it turned out Rose knew. I'm afraid your military pension fund covers refurbished only, Mr. Callis. I can assure you it's perfectly safe. He squinted up at me, not Rose's face, considering his heart rate. I don't think so. Out, both of you. All right, the clerk sighed. I'll need your signed rejection of this treatment plan. This will also exclude you from further plans. Unless you want to apply for a care facility. This one burned through 3 human nurses, Rose sent internally. That's what we got you for. Request denied. So it was him, or back to bending metal? I wouldn't have minded the metal. But other bots relied on me. Other bots wanted a chance to prove themselves. If it had to be callous, I had to comply. As did he. I couldn't speak for myself right then, but I still had full control over his micro-discharges, and I needed him to relent, no matter the history we shared. I'm not proud of what I did next, but in the end it was just preemptive care-bot duty, nothing more. I released a dose of neuroleptics to control his stress level. The clerk didn't even notice, but Callis sagged and shuffled back out of the light provided by my display. I'm not going to a facility, he muttered. Leave your scrap heap, but be prepared to collect it as soon as it goes bust. Rose was gone already, and I was left with him. Benjamin Callis Jr., Sergeant First Class, 9th Hybrid Infantry Division, survivor of the blackout, divorced, father of a daughter. The legs sticking out under his bathrobe lacked muscle mass. He had to brace himself against the wall as he entered his apartment, but that might have been caused by my meddling. The blackout should have ended us, sir, I said as I ducked through the doorframe. I can still respect that you provided us with a second chance. Bullshit. He walked faster as if to get away from me, but his apartment was a single-room affair. Deserters don't deserve second chances. I hadn't anticipated the scars. MedCloud hadn't listed them with Callis's conditions, so they didn't have an impact on his current state. I saw them when I helped him shower. Some my medical library classified as plasma burns, some shrapnel. The majority were indeterminable masses of tissue. I earned each and every one of these. He couldn't have seen me looking. My cameras were quite discreet, but he might have sensed my hesitation. I wear my medals on my skin and no one can take them from me. They spit in the faces of those who denied the battle I fought. He pounded a nasty red lump on his chest. Your fucking expensive AI brain can't even dream of becoming something as complex. What was so great about a dent? Worst case, he could lead to increasing mobility issues. But if his scars had ever impaired Callis, he seemed to have found new movement patterns around them. I quickly closed the shower curtain. Back then, I didn't know that scars were different from dents, that there might be a way to live around them, but some scarred ugly and some scarred festering, and there is no stopping picking at them until they bleed oily blackness into the surrounding system. Callis's daughter, she was part of the scarring. She never called. She wasn't even an emergency contact. There were no proudly displayed photos or other keepsakes. I found out about her by skimming his local news tag subscriptions for engaging conversation topics. The daily 15 minutes talk on MedCloud's checklist had to be filled somehow, and I was sick of Callis's attempts at bullying me. Her name was never favorited, but it was his #1 query at all providers, and all recent items were marked as seen. Some had been flagged as violent slander, all from channels associated with the notoriously anti-bot Humanist Liberation Army. The police typically hadn't reacted to Callis's complaints. I got instantly fascinated. It didn't seem too bold to suggest we visit the rally she'd be speaking at in 3 weeks. Shared activities strengthened the bond with the patient after all, and Callis could have used the day out. He exploded, accused me of sniffing in on everything, including his bowel movements, as if I hadn't done a great job at whole person care. You dare speak of my daughter? The cup of decaf I had made shook in his hand and a stress alert flashed. You who got all of her and left me with nothing? She doesn't care if humans have jobs or protection or fucking dignity. Keep her and her whole bot-loving hippie gang. She's no child of mine. I couldn't say I was surprised to see he was no loving father. If there had ever been a tender side to him, it would have shut down during the rupture. I drowned his adrenaline in beta blockers. The cup gradually stilled and his heart rate decelerated. Professional nursing done right. Until a second later, the cup came flying and squarely hit my chest plate. Out of my body, out! I don't want every hard edge in my life blunted, understand? You take it like a man and live with it, and if you can't stand it, go to hell. I could have told him about standing it. Callis's daughter lived in the same city. If he would have been man enough to face her. She had a wife, a career as an attorney. But he couldn't live with the fact that she dedicated her life to cowards, that she was a bot rights activist. I mopped up the mess while he stomped away. When I wiped at the coffee stains on my chassis, I noticed his tin mug had chipped off a tiny piece of white nurse paint. Yeah, thank you for listening. The rest of the story can be found online in Future SF.
Thank you, Simone. So another cliffhanger. And I think Future SF, that's the journal, Ralph, that you edited recently, the issue?
That's correct, yes. future-sf.com to be precise, which is a professional science fiction magazine that is dedicated to publishing works in translation and from writers outside of the traditionally Anglophone world. A really great project, and was a lot of fun to work with. Especially enjoyed working with Simone on her story.
Awesome. So Simone, I think, did you have a question you wanted to pose to the panelists?
Oh yes, I did.
Okay.
So I thought that a lot of healing and healthcare traditions have been discontinued, or mostly discontinued, like shamanistic or monastic traditions. And I wanted to know if you see a future for these in science fiction, or if it will all be about high-tech medicine only.
Interesting question. I actually know someone who is studying to be a shaman, so it still exists. But anybody else? How about future?
Well, all of the stories, if they resonate with our readers, are about human beings, right? And as such, I think as human beings, we're always going to be seeking spiritual or nature-oriented healing, and not just high tech. It's just the nature of us. In fact, I wonder if and when there came a time when we no longer sought the spiritual or nature itself, would that mean that we are something other than human?
Mm.
And of course, that's a whole nother science fiction theme, but.
Interesting. So who else wants to have a go at that?
I was wondering about how do you draw the distinction between high tech and spiritual or other things, right? So for example, if there is truth in the idea that we get a special kind of psychological benefit from meditation or from communing with nature, right? In a sense, it seems like science can completely embrace that, right? So there doesn't necessarily need to be a conflict between at least a certain kind of way of thinking about traditions and spirituality and science.
Okay. Well, those are some interesting questions, and I would suspect that as technology evolves, we will evolve other forms of spirituality and meditation via technology. Like now there are meditation apps. I don't know how you could take that further to integrate the technology with the spiritual, but I'm sure humans are stubborn like that, and we'll find a way. I'd like to open it up to questions from our audience. I don't see anything in our Q&A box.
Could I ask, to go further with what we've just been talking, where Eric was talking about opening our minds so that we all embrace each other, which, yes, that does sound Borg-like and a little bit intimidating. I don't want everybody knowing my dark thoughts, but, I can have a nice smiley face and be thinking something else. But I'm wondering how such an experience of at least being able to, at will, open up our minds, how that would affect the spiritual ability to heal. I think the two issues seem to cross-seminate. I was wondering if anybody wanted to pursue that, because it seems like we're coming to a theme there.
Yeah, I would enjoy it if it were a way, if you could turn it off and turn it on, as you say, at will. I think that's better than just being constantly wide open to everyone. Any thoughts?
Our understanding of the human mind and of sociality is so dependent on our evolutionary history and our not very technological embodiment. And if our potentialities change and our bodies change, our whole way of understanding what it is to be an individual and our sense of human possibilities, or a sense of what it is even to be a human, and what's the line between that and something else, could just change radically. And I think that's fascinating and important to think about. And science fiction is one of the best ways that people have been thinking about that. But I think we also should be thinking about it as philosophers and technologists and psychologists and citizens and all. I think it's a fascinating set of issues that we really only touched the surface of.
Yeah. So I'd like to turn it back to Ralph. It looks like we don't have any questions from we have something when I'm not looking. We do have a question in the Q&A box. Ralph, do you want to read it?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So this is from Luke Elliott. Thanks for your question, Luke. So often, writers infuse deeply personal topics and meaning into their work. Could the panelists talk about what drew them emotionally to their stories, if they are comfortable? Anyone like to go first on that, or volunteer to share something about?
I'm chatty, but I don't want to dominate. I've always got something I can say. I mean, this story, for me, so my father died in 2015, and he was a big influence on me, both personally and intellectually. And it kind of almost took his death for me to really think through the value and meaning of his life. He was a psychologist and an inventor and a technologist, and he was fascinated by the potential for human beings to change themselves through psychotechnology. Now his ideas came to fruition in the 1960s, and he had been a student of Timothy Leary's, and he had been a student of B.F. Skinner's, and he invented the location monitoring system, the ankle monitors that people wear as an alternative to prison. And he did that as a way of, he wanted it to be not a form of punishment, but a way to keep people out of jail so they could still live productive lives. He was especially interested in juvenile delinquents, as they were called at the time, and not having them get into the whole prison thing. So he thought through his whole life, he had this very optimistic vision of the potential for an understanding of psychology and technology to come together to to really improve people's lives. And he never fully was able to bring that to fruition. And I have this kind of darker view, as came out maybe in this story, about, he was an optimistic 60s person, right? And I'm a more dark Gen Xer, right? And, so for me, the story is partly a conflict between me and my father, right? So it's almost like a cartoon of my father's voice in the story, right? As the narrator in the story, but then I think as you're hearing the story, you can hear the writer's dissent from the narrator's voice, which is kind of neat.
Well, thank you, Eric. Yeah, it's often that thing of artists say, "Oh, this is this horrible experience that I'm going through, but I can use it," which makes us a little weird, perhaps. But also, I think that it, sometimes it's our way of working through those things ourselves and processing them, and they can be useful to us. Anyone else have something to share on that? Looks like Sally, you've unmuted.
Yeah, like Eric, I always have something to say. The book was, the story was actually initially inspired because Thomas Jefferson Hospital, which is a prominent hospital in Philadelphia, wanted to get science fiction writers to think about the future of healthcare and come up with hopeful stories that that then could inspire the current medical establishment and scientists to come up with something. And so what it was suggested to me by someone at Jefferson that I should write something, and I fell back on a theme that does keep me going, which is the essence of what it is to be a human being. And my big photographic project that I'm known for is called American Hands, where it's about the connection between the hand, the mind, and the heart, which makes us human. But then, and human touch to me is so important. But then my husband passed away. And I realized that what is communicated between two people or any people who really are connected emotionally or in any other way, that we communicate it with our hands. We reach out, we touch each other. And what would it be like as a society if we all lived in our homes and never came out and everything was brought to us electronically or whatever? I was thinking about what we're living through right now, but I was imagining how cold and how lonely and how I wondered if that would increase mortality rate. And that's where the story started, was would loneliness, would the lack of human touch increase the mortality rate within a society? And I guess if we could ever divorce the COVID deaths from the loneliness deaths, we might know that answer now, which is sad to say, but that's where that came from.
Thank you, Sally. Were there any more Simone? Okay, everyone wants to share. This is awesome.
Okay.
First,
I had a hard time at first to tell a story about healthcare, because first you go into the direction of shiny technology, and well, there are certain questions you can ask. But for me, the story only worked when I got into personal history, into family history. And I don't know if it was already so much in the excerpt I read, but for me, it was about the dark histories some family members have. And that's especially true for Germans with their World War II history. So the generation of my grandparents, there is always someone in the family who probably did something horrible or not. And people mostly don't talk about this. And this creates some deep rifts. And so this is what I drew on for this story.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I think I can also share. So most of my story was like trying to combine something I find very interesting, and no matter it's from a book or from paper. So this one is coming from the core sci-fi core is coming from this book. It's called Through the Language Glass. And this is a really good pop size book if you guys want to see the evolutionary of a language, especially colors and other things. I highly recommend this book. So I read this book first, and then I think it really changes the way I'm trying to think about the story, because the story from my reading is about communication between parents and kids, adult kids, and it kind of like mimic what my mom and I actually communicate with each other. So my mom studies ancient Chinese literature, and she's a professor in China. And I study mostly computer science, and now I'm a programmer in New York. But we also share the books and all the literature, the arts thing from my childhood. But later on, when I started working on the high-tech thing, like currently I'm working on augmented reality and machine learning things, I find it really hard to communicate with her about what I'm doing. So sometimes I think that is for people, for like the high-tech workers like me, someone, especially my coworkers, they feel like, okay, it's natural, and they just don't want to explain it to people because it's hard, and sometimes it's not that useful to explain the details of your work to others. But I held that idea for a long time. Think, okay, I just don't want to talk my work to my mom. But later on, when I read this book and I revisit all these ideas from myself, I think there is a way for us to actually communicate, even though we are now in like two different domain area and we have different knowledge, we have different kind of language. We can still choose to communicate in some common or shared sense. So that is probably that the story is like a solution to my own problem. And I think it's inspired by some kind of scientific research, but it's actually tied to my personal experience as well. So that's about my story.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well,
Okay, I'll hand it back to you.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's great. And thank you, to all of our panelists for all of the interesting stories and interesting speculation about the future and what might be possible. And just thank you to everybody who came today to listen to these stories, and to all of our Kickstarter backers to help us make this project a reality. I really am very proud to be involved with this, and I thank Ralph for thinking of Inlandia when he was looking for a means of getting this published. So I think we're just going to say goodbye, but we will see each other again in the real world, hopefully sometime in the future. I also encourage you, if you haven't already, please take a look at the Kickstarter page. You can just read some of the updates. And Ralph, do you have any final words about our campaign this evening?
Yes, I also wanted to again say thank you to all of you for attending today's reading and making this a very special event for authors, for Katie and me. And most of all, again, I want to thank the backers who made this possible, have made this a reality. The only real question that remains is how long will this book be, right? We need nearly $8,000 to fill out a full-length anthology. So that's our stretch goal. And the closer we get to that mark, the more stories we can include. If we do fall a little short, we may be able to still acquire some reprints instead of original stories to fill out that 80,000 word goal. But we want to bring you new and innovative ideas, the kinds of ideas that can inspire young people to go into health science and solve today's problems, or inspire today's healthcare professionals to do new solutions in the shorter term. So your pledge, potentially tax deductible pledge if you're in the US, can really make a difference. And not just by inspiring readers, but I'll also be donating proceeds from the sale of the book to the World Health Organization's COVID-19 fund. So your support is really working on so many levels. If you haven't pledged already, or if you were on the fence about maybe upgrading your pledge for some of the newer reward bundles, please act now. You have only about 7 hours left. And you could get distracted by other events this evening. So please don't miss the chance to receive exclusive back rewards like additional ebooks, audiobooks, and signed editions, and so forth. So again, thank you all for participating today. Thank you to our great authors. Thank you, Katie. Thank you again.
All right. Well, so on we go. We will see each other again sometime, and thank you for being here. Have a great rest of your day. Try not to be too distracted. Okay. Thanks. Bye.